Somewhere in southern China right now, there is a building the size of several football fields, running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, doing one thing: growing shrimp. Not catching them, growing them. Indoors, under artificial light, in stacked tanks of filtered water from birth to harvest without ever seeing the ocean. The facility can produce tens of millions of shrimp every single cycle. It operates with the precision of a semiconductor plant, and most people eating shrimp tonight have absolutely no idea this world exists. This is how China feeds the planet's obsession with shrimp, and what actually happens from the moment an egg is fertilized to the moment that bag hits your freezer. To understand how we got here, you have to go back to the shrimp itself. The species that built this entire industry is called the Pacific white shrimp, known scientifically as Litopenaeus vannamei. Originally native to the Pacific coast of Latin America, it was introduced to Asian aquaculture in the 1990s. It grows fast, survives in high-density conditions, and converts feed into body mass more efficiently than almost any other farmed seafood. For an industry obsessed with scale, it was the perfect animal. China took that species and ran with it in a way nobody had anticipated. By the 2000s, China had become the largest shrimp aquaculture producer on Earth, accounting for a significant portion of the world's farmed shrimp supply. Coastal ponds in Guangdong, Zhejiang, and Hainan provinces stretched for miles. But then something went wrong. Disease hit. White spot syndrome virus, early mortality syndrome, a series of devastating outbreaks that wiped out entire harvests across coastal operations. The outdoor ponds that had driven the industry's growth became liabilities overnight. Farmers lost everything. Some provinces saw mortality rates exceeding 80% in affected ponds. The industry had two options: scale back or evolve. China evolved. What came out of that crisis was something that had never really existed at that scale before: indoor recirculating aquaculture systems, or RAS. Massive enclosed facilities where every variable, water temperature, salinity, oxygen levels, pH, feeding schedules, lighting cycles, could be precisely controlled. Where disease couldn't enter from outside because outside didn't exist. Where shrimp could be grown in a completely artificial environment, optimized entirely for growth rate and survival. The first large-scale RAS shrimp facilities in China came online in the late 2000s and 10s. By the early 2000s and 20s, the country had dozens of them, with more under construction. Walking into one of these facilities is disorienting. The buildings look industrial from the outside: concrete and steel, no windows. The kind of structure you'd associate with manufacturing rather than food. But inside, it's humid and warm, the air carrying a faint saline smell, and the sound is a constant low hum of pumps and filtration systems running without pause. The tanks are circular or rectangular, arranged in rows, often stacked on multiple levels. Each tank holds thousands of shrimp at various stages of development. The water cycles constantly through filtration, removing waste, replenishing oxygen, maintaining the precise chemistry that keeps the animals alive and growing. But the story starts before any of that. It starts at the hatchery. Shrimp reproduction doesn't happen in the main grow-out tanks. It happens in a separate, even more controlled environment where broodstock, the adult breeding shrimp, are maintained and managed. These are not random animals pulled from a grow-out batch. They're selected for genetic traits, growth rate, disease resistance, feed conversion. They are, essentially, the research and development department of the whole operation. Female broodstock in large Chinese hatcheries are kept under specific lighting schedules that simulate natural day-night cycles, which triggers their reproductive behavior. When a female is ready to spawn, she can release hundreds of thousands of eggs in a single spawning event. Those eggs are fertilized, collected, and moved into hatching tanks, where they're kept at precise temperatures, usually somewhere around 28 to 30 degrees Celsius for Vanamai. Within hours, the eggs hatch into something that barely resembles a shrimp, the nauplius stage. They're microscopic. They don't eat yet. They're living off their own yolk sac. Over the following days, they pass through several more larval stages, zoea and then mysis, and at each stage they're fed different things. First, single-celled algae, then brine shrimp nauplii, then increasingly complex formulated feeds. This entire larval phase takes roughly 2 to 3 weeks, at which point the animals have transformed into something recognizable as a juvenile shrimp, called post-larvae. They're still tiny, maybe a centimeter long, but structurally they look like miniature versions of what they'll become. The post-larvae are then moved to nursery tanks, where they're acclimated and grown to a slightly larger size before being stocked into the main grow-out tanks. The reason for this intermediate step is survival. The jump from hatchery conditions to full grow-out conditions is stressful. A nursery phase builds resilience and reduces the mortality that would otherwise occur. In the grow-out phase, the shrimp are stocked at densities that would be impossible outdoors. Because the water quality is actively managed around the clock, the system can support animal populations far beyond what a natural pond environment could handle. Feed is delivered through automated systems on regular schedules throughout the day. Water parameters are monitored continuously with sensors, and any deviation triggers an automated or manual response. The shrimp grow for roughly 60 to 90 days in the grow-out system, depending on the target size. Larger facilities often stagger their stocking schedules across dozens of tanks so that harvest isn't a single event. Instead, some portion of the operation is always ready to harvest, delivering a continuous flow of product rather than a seasonal boom and bust. If you've made it this far into how this whole system actually works, and you want to see more operations broken down like this, subscribe. We cover stories like this every week. When harvest day arrives for a given tank, the process begins with reducing the water level to concentrate the animals. Workers equipped with nets move through the shallow water, and the shrimp are scooped out and moved into containers filled with chilled water. The goal from this point forward is speed. The faster the shrimp move from harvest to cold, the better the quality of the final product. From the harvest tanks, the shrimp go directly to the processing facility. At large Chinese operations, this might be an entirely separate building or a connected section of the same complex, but either way, the transition is rapid. Processing facilities operate in temperature-controlled environments, typically just above freezing, and the workers are dressed in full protective gear: gloves, masks, waterproof clothing. The first stop in processing is grading. Shrimp come in different sizes, and the market price varies significantly based on count per pound or count per kilogram. Grading machines use a combination of weight sensors and conveyor systems to sort the animals into size categories automatically. What would take a team of workers hours to do by hand gets done in minutes. After grading, the shrimp move to the peeling and deveining lines, if the product is destined for that market segment. This is where human labor still plays a major role in Chinese processing facilities. Skilled workers along a conveyor belt remove the shell and the digestive tract, the dark line running along the back of the animal, with practiced speed. A good processor can work through an extraordinary number of shrimp per hour. Some facilities have introduced semi-automated equipment for this step, but for many product types, hand processing still dominates because it produces better yield and appearance. The specific product form determines what happens next. Whole frozen shrimp go directly from the grading stage to glazing and freezing. Peeled shrimp go through the peeling lines first. Breaded shrimp, like the butterfly cut pieces common in food service, go through additional preparation steps including cutting, coating, and pre-frying before freezing. Glazing is a step most consumers have never thought about, but is absolutely standard in the industry. After the shrimp are frozen in blast freezers, reaching core temperatures of around -18 degrees Celsius within a matter of minutes, they're briefly dipped in chilled water. This creates a thin coating of ice over the surface, which protects the shrimp from freezer burn and dehydration during storage and transport. The glaze adds weight, which is why frozen shrimp bags always note a net weight after thawing figure that's lower than the labeled weight. Packaging happens at the end of the line. Shrimp are weighed into specific portion sizes, placed in bags, the air is evacuated, and the bags are sealed and labeled. A finished bag of frozen shrimp at this point has gone from a live animal in a tank to a sealed frozen product ready for export in typically under 4 hours. The logistics chain from here is what makes it possible for Chinese shrimp to compete globally. Cold chain infrastructure in China has improved dramatically over the past 2 decades. Refrigerated trucks move product to major ports, primarily in cities like Guangzhou, Shanghai, and Tianjin, where it's loaded into refrigerated shipping containers and sent to markets across Europe, North America, and Southeast Asia. The economics are stark. Labor costs in Chinese processing facilities, while rising, remain significantly lower than in major consuming markets in Europe and North America. The scale of operations drives down per-unit costs in feed, energy, and infrastructure. And the RAS model, while expensive to build, dramatically reduces the crop losses that plagued outdoor operations and creates a more predictable production schedule that buyers can rely on. But this system isn't without its criticisms. The energy footprint of indoor RAS facilities is substantial. Running pumps, filtration systems, climate control, and artificial lighting around the clock consume significant electricity. Critics in the sustainability space have pointed out that the carbon footprint of intensively farmed shrimp, particularly when energy comes from coal-powered grids, can be higher per kilogram than for some forms of wild-caught seafood. There's also the feed question. Pacific white shrimp in aquaculture are fed formulated pellets that historically contained fish meal derived from wild-caught fish, creating a dependency where farm seafood production required removing wild fish from the ocean. The industry has worked to reduce fish meal dependency through alternative proteins, including soy, insect meal, and various single-cell proteins. But the transition is ongoing and uneven across different producers. Water use and waste management are also significant challenges. Even in recirculating systems, water is periodically discharged and must be treated before release. At the scale that Chinese facilities now operate, the cumulative impact of that discharge on local waterways is a legitimate concern that regulators and operators are navigating with varying degrees of success. None of this erases what the industry has achieved. The technology underlying modern RAS shrimp farming is genuinely sophisticated. The ability to produce seafood protein at scale in an enclosed environment, largely insulated from weather events and disease outbreaks that devastate outdoor operations, represents a meaningful step in food system resilience. And the traceability that large modern facilities can offer, where every batch of shrimp can be traced back to specific tanks, feedlots, and production dates, is actually better than what most wild catch supply chains provide. The workers who move through these facilities every day, whether in the hatcheries managing broodstock or on the processing lines moving thousands of kilograms of shrimp per shift, are part of a system that feeds a significant fraction of global seafood demand. The world eats more than 5 million metric tons of shrimp annually, and a substantial portion of it passes through operations like the ones described here. The next time you pull a bag of shrimp from the freezer, the animal inside was likely born in a hatchery tank, raised under artificial light in water that was cycled and filtered and monitored around the clock, harvested, processed, frozen, shipped across an ocean in a refrigerated container, and landed on your shelf within a window of time that the cold chain kept precise. It's a strange thing when you think about it. The most consumed seafood in the world, grown in a building that looks nothing like the ocean. There's another one on screen if you're not done yet.